Hey guys, so there seems to be a divide now between international fans of K-pop and the Korean public in general when it comes to the question of whether New Jeans creator Min Hee-jin was telling the truth at her press conference. At first I thought it was a little bit of a media play hyping up her press conference, but it does seem to be the case where a lot of Korean people have sided with her and believe that her performance during the press conference proved to them that she was telling the truth. Whereas a lot of people in the international community just look at it and be like, that is so obvious that she's just lying throughout the entire 2 hours. Who is right? And is it right for Korean people to then say, oh, you international foreigners don't understand Korean culture, that's why you don't know like why we believe that she is telling the truth? But let me tell you, Linda, I have been in a Korean company and I have seen a situation like this unfold many a time where initially I was like the only person seeing how manipulative this person was, and it took the Korean people months after to finally realize that, oh yeah, this person is really manipulative. So I really want to counter this claim by Korean people saying like, oh, foreigners don't understand this situation. Because you know what? You really get tricked the best by people within your own tribe. Actually, if you want to be deeply fooled, only somebody in your own culture can do it. And in this video, I want to break down why Korean people legitimately believe her and why they're not doing anything wrong by believing the presentation that they saw, but I do want to point out they are wrong for being so proud of being fooled. So a lot of you were saying, how could she have walked out into this press conference dressed so shabbily? How could she have had potty mouth like that and gone through 2 hours? And how could she have gone through so many weird turns of phrases that really didn't make sense and didn't connect, and yet have a lot of the Korean public be not only trusting her, but a little bit enamored with her? How could that unlock the key in the hearts of many Korean people? But I also do want to point out that yes, Korean people can say like, well, see, you just don't understand that these are the keys that open the, the door, because we think that that means it's true. However, just because you can open the safe, you gotta check whether the money or the jewels in there are real. And I think in this case, she knew exactly which keys to use, and she knew that she already planted fake goodies inside that safe. So what did Min Hee-jin give the Korean public that made them trust her? And really, not only that, feel some sort of connection to her. In short, I think she gave them inspiration. She spoke, supposedly, to power in a way that Korean people can only dream about, on a platform that only Korean people can dream about. And she did it in a way that I want to call soju style, like when you were just pounding back the soju, you're so upset with your boss or your family and you're just venting. She did it in that format so that it was kind of immediately resonant for people kind of in that kind of headspace, which is almost everybody. Every normal person just can't always mouth off like that, so they're mouthing off with the soju bottle after work. So she really stressed in that way that she was sort of like one of the people speaking against some sort of oppression, which almost everybody feels in Korea. Why'd she dress like a hobo chic? That was very, very strategic. It wasn't only just to try to make her seem more relatable. Immediately, I think she knew, because she's a branding expert, And branding, a lot of the times, most of the times, the ugly wording of it is essentially dealing with people's prejudices, trying to inform the prejudices or kind of lean it to some certain way. I think that's when branding people are like, oh, we're going to communicate, what you're saying. But the big portion of that's not so elegant to say is that you're doing that in context to what people already believe and have already made assumptions about. You have to crack through that first before you can put your brand out there. And in this case, when the Korean public, especially mothers, especially people in her age group, look at her as a woman who did not get married, prejudice, like these are all going to be negatives. She's not married. She doesn't have kids. So immediately for people in that age group, like other mothers, they're going to look at her and be like, what does she know about the world? Secondly, she stayed as a career mom, and yes, she probably, any career mom who has to really suffer through it deserves what they get. But there is, I think, some sort of jealousy or kind of a negative feeling of mothers who've had to sacrifice their careers and stay at home, raise the kids, and to see her be so successful. If she walked out there the way that she kind of somewhat dresses, sometimes she dresses casual, sometimes she kind of dresses like that Chanel like suit. If she came out as kind of like, what do you call it, like a boss babe, all done up, looking like trying to be like a power woman, that would have turned off a lot of people. And she actually really knew that, because then she's going to be seen as unwed, no kids, but successful career woman and super rich, looking like she has abandoned the concept and institution of family to pursue wealth and greed. That is essentially how people would see her, and that's sort of how the headlines should have gone, but she immediately blocked that by coming out looking like a hobo and then saying that she's a mother, even though she's not. Very strategic. And then to blunt the actual argument and also the prejudice against her about money. She was fighting for money. All she's been doing for past 3 years is trying to get more money. And this whole thing came about, where she got in trouble, was because of her pushing for more and more money. So if you're gonna say like, I don't care about money, you better be looking like you don't care about money. And that's what explained the getup. And that is what I think initially that opened one door. Like if the safe is all the way in, after multiple rooms, that unlocked the first door, because that first door was going to be prejudice against her as some like fancy, rich, kind of working woman who doesn't care about kids and family. So she blended into the, I'm just a stay-at-home mom like you. So even though Korean people would really look down upon a person dressed like that as well, trying to give a press conference, the way she did it, she kind of already assumed that she comes from a position of immense power and privilege, and so she kind of brought it down to make it look normal. And in that way, this is the theme that she kept pounding upon that really does work with Korean people. It's kind of the opposite. This is why Korean people will say, like, you just don't understand. Like, you just don't understand, like, how a crying hobo with a potty mouth, whom we normally would, like, shun and think it's like a, crazy psycho and just, like, kind of belittle them, really won our hearts. Essentially, in this type of situation where there is somebody in a position of power that would then be kind of given, like, the evil eye or kind of jealousy or something like that, and if they get, especially when they get in trouble, the public in Korea, and probably elsewhere as well, want to see a bit of humility from the person who is presenting themselves. So I've heard some Korean analysis on this where they looked at the current President Yoon and his main rival, and how the opinions are different in the public based on their style. That right now, the opponent of the president is very much always kind of saying like, hey, this is a situation, I'm just like, regular guy, and he kind of really brings it down. And President Yoon's trying to be all like presidential and not give in, and people don't like that in that context. Of course, they don't want to see a president acting like a hobo and crying and doing all that kind of stuff, but there is something psychologically when somebody in power asks for help or is being a little bit more vulnerable that people really respond to, in the sense that it's the truth. Because in Korean society especially, what they're thinking when they see this girl come out in that sweater and that cap is that nobody would do that. Nobody would speak like this with a potty mouth. Nobody would cry like that unless they were truly in pain and telling the truth. It has to be the truth, because this woman otherwise would be coming out in Chanel and stuff like that. But she's so at this point where it must be the truth what she's saying, and she kept telling you what to believe. Like, it's not about the money. So it's kind of like conditioning. It takes about 7 times for somebody to remember something, and she was going off 7,000 times. It was 2 hours. So she definitely got enough out there that it would, the message would kind of sink in. So when she was going off with her soju mouths and like saying like, this is like, these are my horrible bosses, it resonated with people who felt like they were downtrodden by the system, which is almost everybody, workplace abuse. When she was crying like that, of course it looks like, oh, super unprofessional, but her audience wasn't the boardroom. Her audience was like the living room and the laundry room, where these mothers are like, whoa, that's like me. Like, I'm wearing that outfit right now. I didn't have time to do my hair. I'm wearing my husband's baseball cap and his sweater. And in that way, she's made sure she sounded like that mother who was just trying to keep it all together. And in this way, she was able to then move to her messaging, her arguments, her position, her essential manipulation of what happened. And because a lot of the language was dressed in this volume and this sound and this color of a mother and a worker at her wit's end who doesn't care about money, you tend to sort of ignore that, oh, she has some really shady language structure that most people, if you were not swayed by that, you'd be like, that's a red flag. And so when she said like, HYBE is framing this in a certain way and I want to frame it in a different way that's, according to my truth, that was suspicious to me from right off the bat, because I think she was subconsciously, revealing her lies, because HYBE really didn't frame anything in terms of like this whole like messaging or Kakao Talk. They just released like one snapshot of a Kakao Talk message that she had between herself and one of her underlings that just outlined the formulaic plan to take over a door. They didn't frame things. And so then she said, like, I'm going to frame things. And so I think she just admitted that she was going to distort the truth, and she's basically taking it all away from the aspect of money, because she kept repeating probably over 30 times, this is not about money. And when it really was, and she was saying like, it's my commitment to artists in the spirit of a mother. It's my commitment to New Jeans with the spirit of the mother. Like she kept harping on that. And then she also brought in all this evidence that I think would be very disadvantageous to her, and she reinterpreted it. I want to go into the messages between her and Pang PD in a different video, but in general, I think the reason why she said like, oh, this doesn't make sense, right, is kind of like provoking me. I think essentially she lied about what context those messages were, and really instead of like him messaging her out of the blue, I think they were actually like in the same big conference room negotiating and arguing over her pay, and he was just messaging her You know how sometimes, like, if you're in a big group meeting, you can message somebody who's like right in front of you because he's saying like, why are you smiling? So I think she took some of the evidence that was going to be used against her in the sense of like, yeah, this is evidence that she was just fighting for money. This thing was all about a fight over money and control. And she relabeled it and recontextualized it and said it was like all out of the blue. When you look at the timestamp, it was like 2 in the afternoon. So how can Korean people be fooled by this when it's essentially their own culture? Why do I not trust when Korean people say like, oh no, what she's doing is so indicative of somebody telling the truth. That's why I really trust her, and this is why you don't understand. Well, let me tell you, Linda, again. So I think I brought this up in a different video, just one example of how I was able to spot someone who is super manipulative right away using the cultural context of Korea when I was working at, yes, a media company in Korea. I'm not gonna say which one because there was many, so don't try to like identify, but girl, I was just like, this person, yeah, it was a female. So I could see how she was manipulating the Korean girl identity of being extremely kind to hide the fact that she was manipulating and terrorizing everybody. And I saw it right away because those gestures, though I understood them, did not work on the same level to me as it did on people in the office who were born in Korea, because in a sense that if you are always second guessing somebody who is putting on such a kind face with all the kind gestures and the kind language, in a way you are betraying your culture. So that's where the manipulation is, because you have to give the benefit of the doubt if you are saying like, yes, 인사 너무 잘하고, 너무 착하고. So like her moniker was like the 착한 PD. Like 착하다 means like kind and warm-hearted, and even more than that, honest, truthful, which she was anything but. And I was just like, when I first heard like somebody call her that and not her name, like she is the kind producer instead of just her name, and then have many people say the same thing instead of her name, say that she's the kind producer, I suddenly thought I was in a museum. I was looking at these people, I'm just like, how can you not see that she is a see you next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like 7 days a week, every minute, every hour, she was just staring in that mirror trying to fix like the kind expression. And I don't know why nobody else saw her. Like, I mean, I could say like, oh, I caught her doing that, but then she was just doing it like all the time. I was just like, how can you not see that her actions, you gotta see the actions. Her actions do not line up with this false front that she's presenting. But if you're in that culture, it would be something negative upon you if you doubted or questioned it. And so instead of attacking and basically having people believe like, no, I'm not talking about like, you know, how kind she, you know, appears or acts. I'm talking about actually like, this is sus behavior and it doesn't match with the kind persona. So then people are just saying, people will then, like they did to me, they're like, oh, you just don't understand Korean culture because like, you know, she is so kind. Okay. Well, her kindness led to a huge argument over the phone, which I think then because I was out of the office and she called me, and you know, they work you up, right? These kind manipulators know how to work you up. And then when she called back, I'm almost certain she put it on speakerphone for the entire office to hear. And then she changed her tone to kind of be like, you know, really softly like stabbing. And then I just was like upset, like driving in the car. And the next day when I walked into the office, everyone was like looking at me kind of like, dang, you know, like Mr. Yeller over the phone. And then, yes, her kindness led me to leave that gig. So I left, and then, you know, everybody was just like, he just doesn't understand Korean culture, or like, oh, like this kind of was like a very bad misunderstanding. And I was labeled the bad guy. Wouldn't you know, about 3 months later, somebody else who worked in that same department kindly sent me a message and said, you know what, that kind PD actually got kicked out of our department and got sent to the company's version of like Siberia with some really aggressive manager because she pissed everybody off. She was terrorizing everybody. She made everybody crazy, and everybody saw her for what she was. I was just like, look, we could have saved you all of that, and if you had only believed me when it wasn't a big deal. Wouldn't you know? But nobody apologized to me saying like, oh, we're sorry that, you know, we said that like you just didn't understand Korean culture, or, you know, we're sorry that you were painted as the bad guy. Nobody apologized. Nobody even probably acknowledges or thinks that, you know, that's what they did. But again, I think I was a little bit one step out of it, one step in it, where I could kind of see what she was doing to manipulate other Korean people and why it made sense, why I understood why other people were falling for it. But I was one step out of it where it just didn't work on me. And I think she was extremely frustrated by that, and she needed me out of there. Otherwise, I would expose her. Not because I would purposefully expose her, but just me not falling for her antics makes a kind of an outlier in the data of like her being so kind. I'm telling you, she was see you 7 days a week. So in a similar way, I think Korean people have been tricked by Min Hee-jin because she is triggering for the Korean public, not like being Korean, but actually being the aspect of a genuine person who is helpless against a higher power, where obviously, okay, Miss $75 million who wanted to turn it into $200 million and was able to get repeated pay increases, repeated revisions to her stock options, where she would just add millions and millions and millions upon each renegotiation point. I don't think she is part of the Davids versus the Goliaths. And I think if more people come out and talk about their work experience, either at SM or at HYBE, it'll probably be very clear that she was nothing but David. I think they'd probably be like, David, she's a Hydra, okay? And as many times as we try to chop off them snake hairs, she just kept popping back. So what do you guys think? Have you been in situations where there was a master manipulator who was using the identity of whatever group you were in, so that they created this shield and this cover, so that if you tried to criticize them, it turned into your criticizing the symbol, the identity, and the group values that they were hiding under, and therefore it made it almost impossible for you to question it until it was too late, because eventually all of these roads end where people are exposed, but usually it's too late after a lot of damage has been done. All right, guys, comment below, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.